back to the Awakening Philosophy Podcast. My name is Jed, and we are reading the Phaedo. We're having a lot of fun. We're seeing a lot of things, and specifically, recently, we have been asking the question, why is excessive pleasure or pains such a problem? And what does Socrates say is the greatest problem of such things? That has been a question that we've been asking. Also, we've been on the trip of what's going to happen in our next life, in the next world. Where are we going? And if the arguments that we're seeing are true, and it's Socrates, folks, but not only because we're hearing it from Socrates and we have reason to trust, we're also learning what it means to understand. We're learning that what dianoia is, specifically what it means to understand. We start with trust. There's a reason why we listen to what Socrates has to say. There's a reason why he's called the father of Western thought. There's a reason why we can recognize the new discoveries we're seeing in philosophical midwifery in his work. There's a reason why The Republic is considered top 5 books of Western literature. There's a reason why the Parmenides is called the greatest book never read. There's a reason for listening to Socrates, but we don't stay there. Of course, we have to trust until we see it. We're learning also what it means to understand for ourselves. Specifically, we're learning what the dialectic is and what it means to end the logos, and what it means to follow the logos, and the significance of following the logos as human beings, as our purpose here, giving us what we need to finally address our problems, understand them in a sufficient way. That's been one of the words that keeps coming up. In a sufficient way, in a necessary way, to see the beauty of even our problems so that we can free ourselves from being shackled to them, escaping our fate. Also, giving us what we need for to reach our destiny, our highest, most meaningful, most significant goals. Not just in this life, but for all of our incarnations. What Socrates has been calling completing our lives. So one of the questions we've been on is, what happens in our next life? Well, that is fundamental to the doctrine of philosophy that Socrates is laying out to us. Do we want to enter that life in a barbarous bog? Or do we want to engage with greater men that you find here, men who have completed their work in the physical incarnation, and greater gods and masters? We've also seen this, that's the significance of learning to become a great daemon ourselves, because it's likeness. It's unlawful for the impure to be in the presence of the pure in that higher realm of reality, which of course makes sense if you consider that our physical world, we're different from each other through having a physical body, so we occupy a different space at different times. Whereas in the higher realm, beyond the physical, what would it be like to be in the company with those sorts of beings? Maybe it's through likeness, through being like them ourselves, through being purified and perfected in our understanding. We've been seeing that our understanding makes us closest to that experience of being, and that our experience of being is a hyparxis of all of the beings, is a culmination, is the root state of all of the things we're interested as human beings, and specifically as philosophers. It's justice itself, it's beauty itself. They all come together in a single point. And that also is what we call truth. And it is the object of knowledge. A lot of heavy hitters, a lot of the ultimate words and ultimate ideas and goals we have all coming together in this hyparxis of being, or self-ousia. So it's somewhere we want to go now, because philosophy apparently is the art and practice of death and dying. It's where we want to stay after this life, don't have to reincarnate. Escaping the cycles of reincarnation, it's sometimes called. And we want to know what it's going to be like there, if there's any learning we have to take with us, and how do we gain access in this life and in the next. So we're talking about starting with a kind of trust. There's a reason for trusting, but we've been learning that this the preparation for that is something called dianoia. We prepare ourselves and we practice this yoga. We call it a yoga because it's a separation of the soul from the body. Yoga means to join with that which is divine. So essentially, all yogas have that as their highest aspect or their primary goal, whether they're explicit about it or not. That's what we're after. And dianoia gets us there. We've been trying to discover what is this mysterious dianoia, because it's not the same way we use the word understanding. And this is another puzzle that we've been uncovering in figuring out what is philosophy and what isn't philosophy. Dianoia. Dianoia is essential to philosophy. It's kind of what defines philosophy. But also it distinguishes it from what it isn't, because it is the most misunderstood thing. Ask anyone what they think of philosophy. Almost zero people, 0.0000001% of people will give you this response, that it's dianoia. Most people think it's to do with the physical world and to do with perceptions and opinions derived from the physical world. Or maybe collecting a story from history. Oh, there's a progression. This guy thought this, and then Kant came along, and then Hegel came along, and then this guy came along, and but what's the best thing to do is to whatever the last thinker was. Some people think it's collecting. Oh, can we find a way of making them all say the same thing? There's an impulse towards unity that our souls seek. And we're seeing that culminates in this unity hypoxis in being. Oneness. And we also see in our exercise of philosophy in our lives, we develop the virtues, but it's a single sort of thing. It makes things simple. Last episode, we were talking about how great philosophy was because it makes things simple. We seek simplicity, we seek unity, we seek oneness. However, we recognize the shadow of the virtues are the vices. The same impulse, the same drive, the same motivation, but directed towards the wrong objects. That is what makes it vice. So that impulse towards unity by trying to save all opinions, like, oh, actually everybody is saying the same thing. All religions are about love, really. Are they? I've heard of some crazy religions that aren't about love. I've heard some crazy religions that people try and make about love so they can unify everything because they desire that. But the pieces they're trying to unify are those which do not fit. As we were reading in the text, it is unlawful for the impure to be with the pure. If these pieces do not fit, don't try and smash them in. Oh, but I want the puzzle to fit. Of course we do. That's what makes us human beings. That's what having a mind means. That's what being human means. That's what the quest of philosophy means. To solve the puzzle, put the puzzle pieces together. But if there are some puzzle pieces that don't fit, they're from a different box, don't try and smash them in and think you're doing good work. Don't try and, it's going to be vice to direct that seeking of unity to try and save unjust or incorrect or false or harmful opinions or groups bound by that opinion. Religion means to be bound by a saving belief. Of course, there are many problems and consequences that follow of that level of being where your highest idea of one that you identify with is a group. In the Parmenides, we're seeing that there are different levels of ideas of one, and we seek the highest because that highest idea of one, Parmenides and Socrates is explaining, that's the self, beyond even God. Oh, blasphemy. No, it's not. Because not all religions call it blasphemy. So if you want to save all religions by saying they're essentially saying the same thing, but some will stone you to death if you think that the self is greater than the creator God, then you can't say they're all the same. And if you try, you'll be doing harm. That's vice. Applies to all of the virtues. We talked about the vice version of temperance or sound-mindedness, to have a mastery over some desires. To do what? Where are you directing your attention then? Is it towards the other pleasures? So you're just going to get better at seeking them? Or is it directed towards truth? So this is one of the big themes of this whole series is what is philosophy and what isn't philosophy. And of course, there are many different opinions about philosophy, but we're not interested in opinions, we're interested in the truth. We all are. Even people who say they're interested in opinions think that their opinion is the true one. I mean, even if they kind of realize they're lying to themselves, they might think that there's a benefit in doing that. There is a greater truth that they're serving. But fortunately, we are learning that what philosophy really is. Again, it's not mainstream yet, but it needs to be. Because we're seeing the consequences that follow. Socrates is giving us what we need from not doing philosophy, from being stuck in the physical world of our senses, chasing opinions, trying to make every stupid opinion that's ever existed somehow correct, to be polite to all cultures, to be polite to all tyrants, to be polite to all ignorance. Can't do that. If a doctor had a patient that came into his office and who had a broken arm, would a doctor be expected to be polite and pretend that he had a healthy body? Or is it part of having an art to diagnose the problem, the cause of the problem, and prescribe a course of action or a what's the word in medicine? Diagnose? No. Prescription? A prescription to solve the problem. Solve the cause of the problem. That's what we're doing. Only the problems we're facing are human problems, problems of the soul and the spirit, and also, by extension, the problems of human society. We want to be happier, we want to be more healthy, we want to go from sickness to health, purifying ourselves from our problems, and from health to excellence, perfecting ourselves. Fortunately, true philosophy gives us what we need to do that. Dianoia. That's what we're attempting to nail down. Also, it gives us what we need to distinguish what philosophy isn't. The charlatans, the con artists, the nice sounding people that maybe push a few buttons in our soul. Oh, understanding. Oh, unity. Oh, what's the meaning of life? I want to know these things. Absolutely. But then they smuggle in opinions or their own misunderstanding of philosophy. This isn't a blame game. Only recently have we got this Balboa text that we're reading, which has the Greek translated accurately and includes the Greek so we can use our internet to nail down keywords, because over the past 1500 years we've had, or 1000 years, we've had mistranslations of the keywords and therefore we've missed the puzzles. Some of them on purpose because of the political system, some of them just because of the nature of the translator. We're all humans, so we all have those two questions. Where are you at on the ladder up, the logos up, and where are you stuck on the shadow, lying flat in a two-dimensional form on the ground? Our problems we can apply, and the more we learn the logos and the nature of the dialectic, the more we can recognize how to climb that ladder up, perfection, and how to purify ourselves from our vices. The same principles and impulses of the soul directed to its improper object. And that's what we're doing with philosophy. We're bringing into light the truth about philosophy. And I appreciate, for those listening, it might be very different from everything you learned, especially if you've done a degree, spent 4 years beating into your head, having teachers beating into your head with, rewards and punishments through grades and all sorts of things. The incorrect idea. and praising you for being able to model yourself on this incorrect idea. You get all these degrees, you get all these awards. Recognition, hey, maybe an income. This is something that Socrates touches on all through his texts. Justice, true justice isn't, if you imagine yourself, imagine the many as a beast, a big loud beast, and you're in a giant auditorium and you hear the voices of the people echoing off the walls. You may think that virtue is to be able to tame the beast, to be able to appease the beast, make sure the beast doesn't bite your head off. But he says that's not true virtue. Talks about that in the Republic, he uses that metaphor. It may be that the many are opposed to the Logos. Still doesn't make the Logos untrue. Doesn't change the nature of reality. So if you come to this series from that background, I appreciate it's difficult and I applaud you for sticking with it, because you've had that beast give you positive feedback. You've had the echoes from the auditorium giving you praise for relating to philosophy as opinions. But we are discovering that specifically not what philosophy is. That makes you, if you're judging through your perceptions, that's the idea, right? Everything is relative. It's all opinion. It's all theory. All we can know is what we perceive through our senses. So we look at people's theories, and Kant has a theory and Hegel has a theory from their perceptions, and you can go through history of all these people's theories. Socrates says that's specifically the opposite of philosophy. We don't want to be looking through our senses. We don't want to be looking to the physical examples of history or what people say. It's not all relative to our perceptions, because our perceptions can lie to us. Talks about the poets are always talking about this. They're always telling us, your eyes and ears lie to you all the time. And Socrates is saying, that's true, but you can push that implication, because not only do our eyes and ears lie to us, the things that you do see with your eyes and ears all seek that which is beyond the physical senses, even sticks. And they have a purpose to remind us. When you realize the things in the physical sense are lying to you, that beautiful thing when I came closer didn't really look beautiful at all. Well, what was this beauty that I recognized? Because it wasn't there. My senses lied to me. It was a mirage. What is beauty itself, and how did I see it if it wasn't there? What am I referring to? That's the purpose of all physical things. That's how you benefit. By doing your work, which is to seek, which you're seeking anyway, even sticks seek anyway, to be self-equal or self-beauty or self-justice, the self-being, to unite with that level that we call reality, but also, as a consequence, benefits by reminding us that our senses lie, that we are seeking the divine, that we can do so through philosophy. And that's what Socrates has been laying out for us. It's very important, because it's we don't just have to learn what philosophy is, we have to distinguish our false beliefs about philosophy. We have to purify our ignorance as well as perfect our understanding. And we start with trust, but we read these texts, which we start, that's where we get the material from. That's why in this podcast, it's kind of different from other podcasts. It's not just me telling you my beliefs or interviewing other people where they share their beliefs. We're actually doing the work. It's an activity. We're playing the game. We have to be reading something which communicates the logos, certain fundamental principle, the archetype of all systems, the paradigm, we can call it. And we're learning as we go, we learn more about what exactly the logos is, but you don't have to understand it completely to be able to share in it, to be able to play the game. As you keep playing, you keep learning. Same thing with music. We have a lyre to the side here. You don't have to know everything about music to play. And the more that you play, the more you learn. And I think this is what it means to be human. The ideal isn't in the human realm. But wherever you're at, you have what you need to play. So whatever your level of understanding of the logos and dialectic and dianoia is, play anyway. And the more you go, the more you'll see. And that's what we're doing. So we have to be reading a text. So it makes this different from other podcasts that we're reading a text. We have a text through which the logos of Socrates, who has, according to what we're reading, completed his work, lived the right life. And if living the right life means mastery of the logos, mastery of dianoia understanding, mastery of the dialectic, so that he doesn't have to go through and keep doing it, then we have a record of what his actions and his words at the end of his life, meaning we have an example of the logos. And not only an example of the logos, but he's using it specifically to benefit us. He's giving us puzzles. He's giving us what we need to play the game, which is fantastic.
Wow. Wow.
So we have something that communicates the logos. We have to exercise ourselves. We have to direct our attention to that. And we've been seeing that this is what specifically makes the virtues the virtues. If you have a kind of even-temperedness and you direct your sound-mindedness, you are more temperate, but you direct that more even attention to physical pleasures, you're just going to be worse at your vice or better at doing vice. Same thing for wisdom. You can be clever and see things as they are, but if you're directing that towards fame or riches, things that people are motivated by when they're not in philosophy, but are motivated by the pleasures and pains, fears and desires of their body, then that's not true wisdom. You're going to be better at being a tyrant. And all of the virtues we saw, the key element seems to be directing our attention in whatever we're doing, all four of the virtues, sound-mindedness, courage, wisdom, and justice, directing it to the logos. That makes all the difference. So, therefore, as a principle, for this to be a good podcast and a good way of spending our time together, we should be directing our attention to the logos. These are not Jed's opinions. They're not even Socrates. Well, sometimes they're Socrates' opinions, but it's the logos that we are looking towards, which transcends all individuals. So it's not about personal opinions, the way philosophy is normally taught to us. It is about that which transcends even human species. Hey, an alien species on a different planet, 1,000,000 light years away, 1,000,000 years in the future, they can discover the logos. We've been talking about that in the Phaedo. We've been reading about that learning is a remembering. It's not a theory the way science, which is the difference, because science is about theories in the sense of you hypothesize a theory based on your physical experience. The more evidence you get, the more they change. Some theories go in and out of style. But this is different. This isn't about a theory. It's about being able to apprehend reality directly, doing what we need to get there, and bringing with us what we need to understand it. So we're not terrified by the experience of reality because we got taught that the devil exists and the devil's going to trick you or something like that. There are a lot of accounts of people who haven't done the work of purifying their false beliefs, who have had an experience of gnosis, knowledge or being, or self-ousia, being able to turn the mind around away from the physical senses and experience mind itself, who have been terrified, who have recoiled. You might call it a bad trip. The implications of their false belief play out as though they're real, kind of like a dream. We want to purify ourselves from those limiting false negative beliefs, but also take with us what we need to understand and recognize what it is we're experiencing. Maybe even go deeper into the experience, and when we come out, if we come out, Socrates isn't, because it's his last experience of this, because he's literally being murdered by the state. But when we come out, being able to integrate it into our understanding, to use that as our model of knowledge, to our paradigm of justice, of truth, that we need to be using for questions and answers. That's been in the text as well. It's these things we experience in being that we use in our questions and our answers. We're asking questions about that experience of pure reality, being, justice itself, beauty itself, equality itself, greatness itself. And we answer as best we can towards that vision. In the week, I went to a function with a group of, I'm a musician, and I met a bunch of different artists. And that's one thing that I realized recognized from that event, is the artists feel in that environment more comfortable with sharing their highest vision. And they kind of use their art, or the skills they develop within their particular art, to communicate that highest vision. Sometimes, there are difficulties living in capitalism where it's not your highest vision, but it's a kind of vision of some company that wants to make money. But when the true artists are doing true art for themselves, they're aiming for their highest vision. And they use the skills they've developed in their field to communicate that to others. That's what we're doing here. We use our highest vision in our questions and our answering in the dialectic, towards ourselves or towards others. Only we are understanding exactly what is the highest vision. Literally, what is the highest experience a human can have? What is perfect beauty? What is perfect or self-justice? And the experience of bliss, of that experience of pure beauty. So we are understanding what the highest one is. And our language that we're using to communicate it isn't a language of brush strokes and colors like a painter, but the language of the logos. And if it's the paradigm, it's the archetype of all other language, whether it's painting or music or sculpture or dance or anything else like that. That will be a shadow of the logos, because the logos is specifically the highest, or one of the highest aspects of being, necessary for the paradigm to unfold into our different levels of reality. And that's what we're learning here. And in fact, we marry the two together, according to Socrates. Do your dialectics, which is the highest art, would follow if it's the paradigm, about your highest vision. What do you think beauty is? What have you learned about beauty so far? Or what have you learned about the soul? We're learning about the soul in the Phaedo. Use the dialectic to ask the right questions. And we've seen that there are 4 questions. And there are 3 parts to each question. And there are another 4 of what happens if the soul doesn't exist. So self to self, self to others, others to others, others to self. That's the most primary paradigm for the sorts of questions you can ask. And because it's always directed towards being, it's literally the highest vision. You might not have it yet. You might just be at the level of belief. That's what we're doing. So we're doing the highest form of art. But Socrates says, but also mythologize it. Express those things that you've nailed down in your dialectic through your singing, through your music, through your painting, through your art, through any other way of communicating it to others. Because this is a message for everyone. All humans benefit from this. It is the human game. It's what we need to enter the true human race. To realize that humanity has a purpose. You can only do that when you understand. It can't be an opinion, because opinions just lead to conflict of differing opinions. But to understand objectively, truthfully, that we have a purpose, that our problems are understandable, rational, and solvable. And our same thing for our purpose. Our purpose is understandable, rational, and solvable. It's not anything goes. My purpose is to conquer the world. That's your opinion about your purpose. It's good that you seek your purpose, but again, all vices have the impulse of goodness directed to an improper object. It's good that you seek beauty, but beating up people is not actually beauty. Justice. It's good that you seek justice, but shooting people, calling people villains and then shooting them is not justice. It's good that you seek justice, but the better you are at playing out an improper object, the more unjust you will be. It's a tragic consequence, but we can move from tragedy to comedy or philosophy even when we realize we can overcome our problems only by understanding the cause of them. And the cause of injustice we're seeing in the Phaedo is the impulse towards truth and phronesis, but directed towards the improper object. We are learning the proper object. And therefore, we're getting the paradigm for true art. A consequence of the true art is we're benefiting. Because, hey, if you can direct your vision towards the highest vision, truth, and your art is the logos and the dialectic, the use of language in the logos through question and answered in a certain kind of structure, the dialectic, then you can have conversations with people to help them purify their ignorance, their improper object, and climb the ladder towards having that vision themselves. So you can do what will actually benefit. So true benefit involved in this true art. And then also apply it to your interests. If you're a musician or if you're a painter, communicate that also through your work. But make sure that when you do a gallery hosting your paintings, you have an opportunity to talk about all of them. Otherwise, people will just interpret your painting. You have to be able to talk about it, which is a way of introducing the logos. By the way, were you inspired by this work of art? Let me talk to you about what it means. Let me introduce you to the logos. Let me introduce you to awakening philosophy in your own world. That's what Socrates said earlier when he said, I'm going to explain in detail and I'm going to mythologize. You got to do both. The true art and the true use of the other arts, you could say. So, what is it that distinguishes philosophy from the others? What is it that allows us to upgrade our interests or hobbies to true art? Dianoia. What the heck is that? Well, again, one of the reasons why this isn't a blame game is we only have the Greek translations now, with Juan Balboa's translation under the direction of the late great Dr. Pierre Grimes. In which the words dianoia are included. Or, because he's also writing for a wider audience who are not familiar yet, he puts a capital U when he says understanding in a different color above the word dianoia. So all of us can recognize, oh no, it's not understanding in terms of like scientific belief or common sense opinion. It's a different thing. Very different. I heard a quote yesterday from somebody. Einstein said, common sense is just all of the prejudice you've developed up until age 18. I thought that was nicely put. Of course, introducing the logos, we can recognize there's more to it, of course. There's the pathologos. There's the fact that common sense is often built up around appeasing that societal monster. Certain ways of being that make sure the monster doesn't bite your head off, or if you can play the monster like a fiddle, you can earn a lot of money. So it's manipulating the monster. And we see a lot of podcasts and YouTube channels who we call it audience locked. They realize if they're more racist or they appeal to the pathologos, which is what? Things like me good and our cave better, outside cave bad, and we can shoot them or hate them. If you appeal to that, then you'll, get more money. So we have people who become audience locked. You see a lot of figures who were who are in that situation. Russell Brand is one of them, of course. But a lot of conservative or right-wing grifters, podcasts, YouTubers are audience locked in that way. They realize the more racist they are, the more viewers they get. The more viewers they get, the more clicks and the more dollars they get. And so they're after riches or fame. Socrates points out, hey, both of those things, riches and fame, are the implications of being a lover of the body. They are mastered by their physical senses, their physical body. Philosophers want to flip that script and have our soul master our body. In fact, that was one of the arguments we went through together. Is the soul more like the divine or more like the body? And one of the arguments is, well, who should be ruling? Should the divine be ruling? Of course. Then those who are not philosophers seeking the highest vision, the divine, being, the eternal, immortal, pure, these are the adjectives we're putting into being that we're using in our dialectic. That's a philosophy. And the fake philosophers, the vice philosophers, the shadow of philosophers, physical senses, opinions. Collect all of the opinions from different cultures or different religions or different time periods. Bring them all together. Well, they're being a slave to their physical senses. Their body is driving them. Socrates as we've been reading in the text. And they become a philosometos, soggy tomatoes, and they are motivated by riches or fame. Klimatos or timos. Philoklimatos, lovers of riches, and philotimos, lovers of fame. Honor. And that's what we see now. All audience-locked people. Often it starts with people speaking their own, what they actually think is true, and then becoming audience-locked, serving the beast of the many. So, important to recognize difference from philosophers, lover of learning, philomethesis, making you a lover of wisdom. So loving learning leads you into a lover of not loving riches or honors, but starting to love learning. We can recognize if there's three parts of the soul: our inward desire, the biggest part, like a snowman, the biggest part on the bottom. Our outward moving. Well, here is what loves riches. Here is what loves honor. You want to be honored and famous for the things that you do. But the third part of the soul is our reasoning, our planning. You can start in the physical world. I think we all do, by being human. But if you direct your attention to the highest part of your soul, your reasoning part of the soul, and love that more than you love sandwiches, more than you love being Instagram famous, you love learning most of all, and I think most of us philosophers in this game start that way, then you realize through your learning, oh, hang on a second, there's a difference between being mastered by my physical senses and mastering my physical senses, and that which should be the master, that is more like the divine, has a non-physical existence. My consciousness or my mind isn't physical. Of course, there are people who try and shut you up from that realization. Oh, no, your mind is just squirting liquids in your brain. Oh, no, your mind is an illusion. Oh, no, nihilism. There's not even such thing as a mind. You're deluded. Or, oh, no, your mind is just a fabrication of neurons. And when you die, you're worm food. Okay, this is something we have to overcome, and we can realize that there's a hierarchy of levels that we see in the Parmenides, but also we can express in the dialectic. What if consciousness, what if mind does not exist? By exist, we mean eternal, in that realm of being, pure, eternal, all those adjectives we've been developing. And what if it doesn't? Well, we've got a list, 4 categories of if the mind doesn't exist. Which one is there isn't a mind? You're crazy. Which one is, oh, mind is just squirting chemicals? Which one is, oh, mind is just a byproduct of neurons firing? oh, mind is just a physical sense. These are different ideas, but they have a sameness in that they are of the category that the mind doesn't exist. Likewise, you have to do side A. What if the mind does exist? And of course, we can get a lot of adjectives or descriptors for what would follow if the mind exists from the Phaedo, because that's the doctrine of philosophy. You have to trust that the mind exists. I mean, you don't have to trust that you are a mind, but trust that it has that internal existence. And then you have to go through this, and we repeat it together, giving us what we need to go from trust to understanding, dianoia understanding. And that makes all the difference. There is the understanding that they have isn't understanding, it's opinion. The understanding that we get in philosophy has a uniqueness. It's specifically directed to the thing that turns vices into virtues, the things that make problems good things, logos. And the logos specifically uses what? The dialectic. The logos and dialectic focus towards what? Being. Those three elements is what makes dianoia. Logos, directed towards being, through the dialectic. That's the ladder. That's the structure. The 8 rungs of the ladder. 4 if it is, 4 if it isn't. Dianoia is where we're at. We're trying to figure out what dianoia is, learning it and practicing it. Encourage you to do your own dialectics and join our Discord channel. Share them with others. You don't have to start a conversation. You can just say, hey, this is what I've done. People will read it. It'll give them something to wonder about. Or maybe you'll share an insight. But that's part of the game too. As I was talking about from the artist meeting I went to last night, sharing your highest vision is part of being an artist, and sharing your highest way of communicating that vision, that's part of the game. And often in our world, we can feel very isolated, especially philosophers, because there aren't a lot of us around yet. So it can be a very lonely sort of a thing. But when we have the internet, and when we do realize there are communities like this, play. Wherever you're at, you're good enough. The saying that Dr. Grimes would always say, a baby goat has everything he needs for the excellence of goatness. You have everything you need for the excellence of humanness. And we're in a journey. It's a conversation. It will continue for as long as you can play. Of course, my experience with Dr. Grimes and philosophers, sometimes people come in and come out. They come in, they realize, oh, this is a certain problem that's been limiting me. And they apply the dialectic to their shadow. They free themselves up in a way they haven't been freed before. Just enough to reach their physical goals. And they're, all right, I'm out. Well, I can do this thing. I can get that job I wanted. I can, seek the riches or the fame that I wanted. Now that I've learned enough about philosophy to overcome my problem. Then they're out the door. They end the conversation. Of course, that's not enough. Keep the conversation going. Our whole life, Socrates, right to his end, he was engaging in the dialectic, talking about being. What's it like? What's it going to be like when I die? What did I need to do while I'm here to get there? What is the true virtues? What is learning? To his last breath. That's what we do here, keep the conversation alive. And we recognize people who act unjustly, in principle, shut down the conversation. Debates. I win, shut up. Or I'm not listening to you because of personal attacks, what we call ad hominem. Look at this person's scandal. Therefore, we can ignore his logos. Nonsense. In fact, having a problem is even more reason to engage in the logos. Because the logos, through the dialectic towards being and towards the shadow of being, is what we need to solve our problems. Hey, the more scandals you've had in the past, the more open to conversation we can be. But the thing is, we've all got problems. It's what it means to be human. You're not born perfect and your whole life is to pretend you're perfect to save yourself from punishment from teachers or or policemen or lawyers. Like our whole life is a kind of defense from people who are wanting to inflict suffering. Why? Because they haven't woken the logos yet. And what does that do? It stops the conversation. Who's right, who's wrong? Okay, you're wrong. What happens to the wrong people? We can rub our hands together while we play out our vice, inflict suffering, do unto others as what was done unto me. Hurt people, that kind of thing. But it's a human thing. We all grew up, we're all part of the chain of evolution, and we had to go through that period of fearing the logos, fearing the mind. Socrates pointed that out, that one of the consequences of not being a philosopher and being a slave to the body is that you fear and hate the mind and the logos. But we want to keep the conversation open. And that's and you can join the Discord if you want to share that. Share your dialectics, share your insights, share your highest vision about anything you're interested in. You're interested in truth, you're interested in beauty, you're interested in soul, you're interested in immortality. Pick one. Pick a few. Do a dialectic on it, which is what? Directing your focus to the highest being, your highest vision, and communicating it with your highest understanding, and that's the logos. Those two together is a dialectic. And dianoia, by the way. Dianoia is specifically directed towards being. So do a little dialectic. Have fun with it. And you realize that having gone through it and shared it and sharing it with someone, you will have seen something yourself that will allow you to go back and start again. Or give you something to do a different dialectic on a different topic. See, even in your dialectics, the conversation keeps rolling. And it's true art. We're picking our highest method of communicating. And picking our highest vision, being. The highest way of communicating is logos and dialectic, and our highest vision is being itself. By definition. There's a nice little triad there. Logos, dialectic, and being. But also apply it to your other way of communicating your highest vision, your art. You're interested in painting? Pick up a brush. What's curious about this game is you don't have to be a good artist, like technically. Of course, you'll get better the more you play. But anyone who looks at your painting, you can talk about it. Oh, let me explain. Let me talk about what I was aiming for here. Then your art, even if it was finger painting, has served a great purpose. You've opened the conversation, and that's what it's all about. That's what we're learning about philosophy. It's opening the conversation. And one of the categories of what philosophy isn't is gatekeeping. You have to know the history of philosophy. You have to know all of these weird opinions. You have to know all these old dead white guys. You have to read all these impossible books. Gatekeeping. No. It's not gatekeeping. True philosophy is the opposite. Socrates talked to everyone. We don't have a lot of the conversations he had with regular folk. And there are reasons for that we'll get into later. But he did, in his text in the Symposium, it was talked about as Socrates communicating with blacksmiths and housewives, and just in their conversation bringing them to tears, which we can recognize as, oh, that's midwifery. That's applying the dialectic to everyone and their problems, helping them gain a profound insight, freeing them from their problems, which would bring you to tears. So if you're doing your finger painting and you get a chance to talk about it, you're inviting someone into the conversation. That's what awakening philosophy is. It's not about who's right and wrong and bombing the shit out of someone who's wrong, or putting them in prison, or taking their money, all the exploitations that we're seeing the implications of in our human society. It's the opposite. It's inviting everyone into the conversation. And you know what? If all conversations follow the logos, Doesn't matter what culture you're in. There are principles that are universal in all language. Then we can all share in the dialectic. It's the opposite of gatekeeping. Everybody is in. Because simply by having language. By having language, having consciousness, and having the ability to self-reflect. There's our logos mind oneself. Triad of the self. Hey, there are even dogs and animals that are learning how to use words. They have these little buttons they push. And I've seen some really cute birds that use iPads to communicate by touching different things. It is adorable. And some of them even ask questions about their own self. Why am I a dog? Why am I a dog and you're a person? Why do we sleep? What is dreaming? I've seen some of those. They are amazing. Now, that's a bit of a tangent, but we are at the stage where we don't need buttons. We can use the logos in a more sophisticated way, which means we can enter the conversation. That's what we're in. Notice all of the things to do with fascism, to do with the evils of capitalism, exploitation, is preventing conversation. You can't talk about certain things in the workplace. You can't even talk to your boss. You never meet your CEO. The people who benefit from your work live in a different country, billionaires. You don't have time. It's work, 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 and we're going to time you. You can only have 10 minutes for lunch. If you work for Amazon, you can't even have time to go to the bathroom. Being a human is bad. Or to be felt guilty about. It's the implications of original sin. You deserve to be exploited. The billionaires are better. They're smarter or something. More chosen by God. Same thing with kings and rulers. Of course, when we realize that's bullshit, that's just exploitation, what's the opposite? Conversation. Freeing ourselves from exploitation and work so we can do philosophy, which is a conversation. Keep the conversation open. Keep it alive. That's where we need to go. And all exploitation is stopping conversation. No union meetings. That just gets you talking. Ban, throttle certain internet sites that prevent conversation. Break people up. Right now, at the moment, they're banning, or they're shadow banning, or they're not promoting political content on Instagram and YouTube and stuff as much. There's like a report that it's come out that they're trying to stop that because get people to stop talking, make them a consumer, make them a slave, distract them from the real issues. But philosophy is the opposite. It's our human quest to open the conversation and invite the conversation. So use that with your art. Put your painting in a gallery and have a conversation, which is different from simply talking about it. Talking about it is one thing. One level of mastery of the logos and dialectic is to be able to explain your ideas the way Seebees was. Seebees was able to give a lovely dialectic on why the soul must be immortal based on the fact we learn through remembering. But when Simmias said, actually, I didn't quite follow, he was out of his depth. So we can see, and then Socrates jumped in and said, hey, let me take over the conversation. So Socrates' use of the dialectic was at a higher level of mastery because he could use it in conversation. So practice that. Do your finger paintings if you've just started today. Put them up somewhere. And don't just talk about how it's a representation of this dialectic you've done on the soul, but engage in a conversation with someone. Try and use it to find out where they're at and where they're stuck. Define your highest vision. Can you give me a demonstration of it in your recent life? Can you divide it up into other examples, repeating themes? And what can we pick out from those divisions that are more fundamental or insightful or primary or causal that we can take back to your definition and see if we can change your definition? See it in a higher way. Also, your problems. You have a problem. Where you stuck? Where you at? Where you stuck? Okay, cool. Where you stuck, by the way? Can you define it? How well can you define it? You can use your understanding of the logos to pick out key words. Oh, you're not familiar with the logos, but doesn't matter yet. I'll pick out some keywords. Oh, you're talking about excellence. Oh, you're talking about courage. Oh, you're talking about beauty. Okay. Demonstration. Oh, how does it demonstrate itself? What's been happening recently? Division. How far does it go back? Are there any other areas where the same feeling of being stuck? By the way, definition. What words come up? What states of mind come up? How does it function? How does it demonstrate itself? Divide it up into other areas or through time? And what was the earliest instance? Or what was the most significant if you're dividing it up into areas? And take that back to the start. Let's define that scene. Because you must have walked away from that scene with something where you thought it was real or true or beautiful because it's become your paradigm for a certain state of mind. That's not the true paradigm. Same thing, same structure, except the wrong terms. Focused on the wrong object. There must have been something believable about that person or that scene that allowed you to walk away with this thing you thought was true about yourself or good about that state of mind. But this way of being was just or true or beautiful. Oh, you are impelled or compelled towards truth or justice or beauty. Only you have an usurper to the throne. You have the wrong term sitting in that right place. So now we have what we need to ask the next question. Do a definition of that. Define that person. How do they look? Use your highest words of logos. Use beauty. Do they look beautiful? Do they look wise? Highest vision, right? And highest words. And you might have to help them, but that's okay. They're here to see your art. You're the artist. You get to talk. You get to be the master of the conversation. But you could say, well, it's not actually you. It's mind is being, because you're following something that's beyond you, because we all share in the logos. So you could say you're being a conduit, or you're sharing in the logos. The logos is being the master. And that's a fun state to be in. Often Pierre Grimes, if you are familiar with Dr. Grimes' work, he has these amazing talks, PRS series on YouTube, and he'll get to the end of them and it'll be a symphony, an hour-long symphony of the logos, and at the end he'll be like, oh, I was wondering how that was going to work out. As though he wasn't doing it, but watching mind unfold. This idea of watching mind is fundamental to reality, to the quest, to the yoga. Watch and ask, what is watching? Watching what? Mind. The whole of seeing, hearing, and thinking right now. Back to Xenophanes' question. What is the whole of seeing, hearing, and thinking, and what's watching? You could say the whole is mind, but the whole of mind, not a specific. Background and foreground together, the whole of it. And what is watching? Well, hey, watch mind. That was a bit of instruction I got myself once. Why not watch mind? Question, why not watch mind? So yeah, watch the logos unfold in the dialectic. And therefore you're both learning from it. Doesn't have to be about where they're stuck. If it's your art, it can be about your vision. Hey, beauty, soul. This is a finger painting about the soul. And each stroke is a different aspect of the dialectic that I've done on it. That I did first before I did my painting. So I'm going to direct you through questions and answers. By the way, what do you think? Blah, 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 blah. Do you think the soul is true? If the soul exists, would it be immortal? So art used as a way of getting interest and inspiration and opening the conversation. And then once it's open, which is the highest, most beneficial use of art, and once the conversation is open, how would you go about doing it? That's what we're reading here. That's why we're reading the Phaedo. That's why we read Socrates. It gives us what we need for the logos, for the material, and the way of communicating it, the dialectic. How is Socrates communicating his seeing, his highest vision, and his logos? Highest vision of being, maybe beyond that, which is a little puzzle. Is there something beyond being? The highest vision of being and his highest understanding, the logos. How do we use that? How do we engage in this conversation? That's the dialectic. That's what we're seeing in the story. And the account of his life. That's why we're doing it. You can have that conversation with your inner voice, with your dreams, and with others in your finger painting art show. So that's why we're reading what we're reading. And the key word that we've picked out today, that refers to the highest vision, refers to our highest method of communication, the logos, through dialectic. Dianoia. This is what dianoia means, and this is what distinguishes philosophy from all of the millions of fake philosophy ideas out there. And something we have to recognize for our own benefit. And it can be difficult to communicate philosophy because people kind of assume you think what they're thinking about philosophy, especially if almost everybody out there uses the shadow version of philosophy, based on the physical senses, not directed towards the realm of being. So we could say, if philosophy doesn't exist, you'd have their philosophy. Why? Because existence is being. That's what the word means. Existence, not physical existence. As we read last time, it's not what you can see, eat, and have sex with. Eat, drink, and have sex with. That's physical stuff. Existence means in being. And if philosophy is the logos directed towards thumbs up being, then that's what makes it philosophy. And what makes what they're doing philosometos. Lover of the body, which makes you a lover of riches or lover of honor. But we start with loving learning, and then we realize, directing ourselves to being and the logos. By the way, that's wisdom. That's the virtue of wisdom. Directing the planning part of your soul through the logos to being and using that in your ruling as your principle, as your paradigm. That's the virtue of wisdom. And we're going to read the Republic soon so we can nail this down for ourselves. But that makes you, if you love that, you're a lover of philosophy. But in the Phaedo, Socrates says, by the way, that approach to being upgrades in a spiritual initiation where you always have that paradigm because you're always in contact with it so long as you're there. That's philophronesis. Thumbs up. The virtue that is innate and more divine and doesn't lose its power. And we got from that, hang on a second, if it doesn't lose its power, then it's a kind of learning, it's a kind of wisdom, it's a kind of being able to plan and guide yourself that would extend beyond this lifetime. Which makes sense why it's the kind of initiation where you can take with you into the next life. And he said, if you haven't done this work and you haven't been initiated in this way, you will end up in the mud and you'll have to reincarnate. So it's a kind of learning that extends beyond this lifetime, and therefore it's a kind of learning by definition, we're here to do. So that's the good triad. Lover of learning, to becoming a lover of wisdom or philosophy, to a lover of phronesis. And this is through dianoia. It's what makes philosophy philosophy. And that explanation is what makes it significant. Significant that we do it. It's what we need to benefit ourselves here and after here. So that's where we're at. Good for us. Let's jump into the text and pick up where we left off. Sorry, excuse me. So going back a bit, the soul is formless and wings her way to the company with the good and mindful God. pure dragging along nothing of the body, no voluntary association with your body. Like if your body needs to pee, but not by choice. Like do what's necessary, but no more, I think he's saying here. Always practicing that. This is what it means to have the virtues. You're always doing it. You're holding on to it for your planning and wisdom. You're holding on to the truth that you get from wisdom and your courage in the ups and downs. And you're desiring it with your sound-mindedness or temperance. And you're functioning with it at all times with justice. And this is nothing else than practicing philosophy rightly. And really, you're practicing to die. Because it sounds like if this is what we're doing, if this logos and dialectic towards being that which actually benefits, the good conversation, the true art, we're practicing that. Which means that if we are practicing to die, not only are we doing what we need to get there, we're taking with us what we need to do while we're there. Socrates is saying, hey, I'm going to enjoy conversations with good men and good masters better than you find here. So once you're in the club, you're going to be doing this anyway. So it's a kind of learning we can take with us and use once we get there. There's a better conversation happening in this dimension. I've heard that before. The real philosophical chats are happening in the fourth dimension. So we're practicing to die. And what we're going to do while we're dead. So, and you are going to be that which is like self. Which is curious. Why is the realm of being not self, but like self? It's divine, it's deathless, and it has phronesis. Oh, there we go. So that virtue of phronesis, that sustaining virtue, the virtue we trade the other ones for, is there. You will be like a good daemon. Daemon, the inner voice, the voice of the self, the voice of the logos. Which itself, if it's the voice of the self communicating for our benefit, it would itself be using the dialectic. So maybe this practice of death and dying is the training of a good daemon. You'll rid yourself from the wandering of the body, ignorance, fear, wild desires, and the other human defects. But if you're initiated, the upgrade of the wisdom virtue, or all of the virtues pretty much, if they're all unified in their sameness of logos directed towards being through dialectic, then you will truly spend the rest of time with the gods. Deathless, immortal. Doesn't that sound fun? Optimistic? If you are stained and impure upon leaving the body because you've been beguiled by the desires and pleasures, if that's what's directed your focus, you're being tricked. Just like, hey, 99.9% of philosophers have the opposite of philosophy. They're beguiling us. Similar principle, right? Only here he's talking about the cause of that, because we are beguiled by the pleasures and desires of self. And you'll believe nothing else is true other than the physical, that you can touch. Highlight that. And not in blue, it's hard to see blue. Touch and see. No. And see and drink and eat and use for sexual purposes. That's what you'll think is true. And you will become to hate and fear and avoid that which is dark to the eyes, but is knowable and touchable, tangible, experienceable in philosophy. Hate and fear and avoid truth, logos, being, beauty itself, reality itself. What a tragedy. If you ever sold the parts in this condition, do you think she'll be pure? Self itself? Self according to self? So we don't want to be seized by the grip of the corporeal, who keeps company and has intercourse with the body. joining, not just sexual intercourse, all of those kinds of ways of connecting to the body. Because you'll be in service of it, and you will make your soul similar to the body. So the insane people, what's the expression? The inmates ruling the asylum. Like in what's the asylum in Batman? Gotham Asylum. Every now and again, the inmates take over. The Joker takes over the asylum in Gotham, which is a myth for talking about the cause of human problems. Isn't it cool? Making it simple. Hey, what's the cause of problems? Oh, just this. Just when your body is ruling your soul. What? That's it. What do you mean? Oh, because you'll think nothing else is true other than what you see, hear, touch, and eat and use for sexual purposes. I suppose, yeah. But also, as a consequence, you'll be accustomed, training yourself through time to hate, fear, and avoid philosophy. No joke. And if philosophy is what we need to solve our problems and reach our destiny, then yeah, simple. To be beguiled by our senses, beguiled by pleasures and desires. Notice, there's two pairs here. Pleasures and pains in the present, and desires and fears of the pleasures and pains in the future. But he's pointing out desires and pleasures are the problem. Think about why. That's a question. Why would it be that desires and pleasures he's singling out as the most significant problems? Interesting. It's a curious puzzle, right? You'll think nothing else is true other than those things. You'll be seized by the grip of the corporeal, one who keeps intercourse with the body and being in its service. The inmates ruling Gotham Asylum. Arkham Asylum, excuse me. That's the name of the asylum in Batman, where the Joker and all of those crazy villains live when they're not on the loose. So, and you'll make your souls of the same nature, similar nature. The body. So, therefore, for a philosopher, the body is burdensome and heavy and earthly and visible, and the soul gets dragged back again into the visible realm. Especially if you're in fear of the formless. We talked about that earlier today. People who grew up with beliefs that limit them. We talked about one of the characteristics of all fascism and exploitation and scammers and bullshit artists is stop the conversation. Number one. Another one is fear the conversation. You don't even start talking with people. What's the expression? No talking about politics or religion at the dinner table or at the event. Why? Oh, because we want everyone to have a good time. So nothing meaningful. Well, it makes sense if everybody is being trained to fear and hate and avoid. There's your avoidance. There's your hate. There's your fear of what happens when people keep the conversation open. Of course, reawakening philosophy means we can have what we need to navigate those conversations well. If people don't think that there is a truth of the divine, and therefore it's all just belief, which is religion, it's all just opinions, that there is no good way of ruling, it's all just, exploitation through people who seek power, where politics is now, then that will motivate those same principles can come up in our conversation, and therefore they'll try and fear and hate and intimidate to win the conversation or whatever, or they'll be loyal to their opinions and beliefs. But We're learning from Socrates how to be a good person. Because justice and the virtues are to do the dialectic logos directed towards being truth. At all times. Not sometimes to be beguiled by our physical senses. Not sometimes be seized by the grip of the corporeal. But all the time be pursuing the logos dialectic and being. Together as a triad, defining dianoia. Practice it. So we can recognize what he says makes sense. And of course, nowadays, we're seeing how bullshit that don't talk about meaningful thing is. Like, everyone has to keep silent. And in the past, that's the Dark Ages, right? They shut down the academy in about 529 AD, I think it was. Shut down the academy. You can't talk about philosophy. You have to blindly obey the bullshit opinions and beliefs from the fascists in charge. We call that religion. You can't read the book yourself. You can't talk about it. You can't talk about philosophy. They were murdered. Libraries burnt. But we're growing. I mean, still, even now, there are books banned and libraries burnt and religious fundamentalists trying to use violence to enforce their particular ignorance. But we're seeing that that's crazy. You can't stop the conversation. You can't stop talking about what's meaningful. And we're seeing playing out in real time what happens if you do. If you do silence the conversation because you're afraid of your own mind and logos, then just the fascists, the strong men come in. And never-ending cycles of war and bloodshed. The same thing we're seeing right now. Netanyahu just genociding, and the level of dialogue is juvenile. There's no use of the dialectic to systematically address the cause of problems, understand them, understand that that this is what follows if we live in a world where we're accustomed to hate, fear, and avoid philosophy. We don't have what we need to do the dialectic. Oh, by the way, this is your problem. This is where you're stuck. This is where you're at. This is what we can do about it. This is how we can solve human problems. So, and likewise for ourselves. So, while it's true for society, it's also true for ourselves. And the more we can be ourselves, be this ourselves, the more we're fulfilling our own purpose, because we're not just going to be here for... Our soul isn't just alive for one life. We're doing what we need for our own growth, but also we practice it, and practicing it, we benefit as a consequence. The rest of the world. So, again, optimistic. Socrates is giving us what we need. And 1,000 or, 2,000 years after we've got this written down, we've realized, oh, yeah, it's okay to read it yourself. You don't have to just do what the priest tells you. That's Middle Ages crap and Dark Ages nonsense. Not only that, you don't have to just trust academics because, oh, they're really smart. Look at all the big words they know. No, bullshit. It's for everyone. Just read, because you just read what's there. That's it. That's what we're doing. So we have the text over here. We're reading what's there. And thankfully we have the text. We have the Greek. We have this internet thing. We can do this. Whoops. We can do up this. Bring up these fun little websites. This one. Translating it into Greek. Symbol font to Unicode converter. Throw it in. Let's pick out a word just for fun. So we read the text. Well, this is a big thing. We have the text. We're not going to get murdered for having the text. We're not going to be screamed at for being a heathen because we're reading it ourselves. We're not excluding anyone because they're a woman. That's bullshit. We've seen that already. But we can say, okay, what's this word? Let's pick out a cool word that stands out to us. Okay, beguiled. Let's copy that. And copy it. And jump into this. Whoop, not that one. Whoops. Paste it in here. Jump to Google Translate, and because we have the internet, we can hear what it sounds like. Woof. Kiegoi vermenti. No, I'm not quite fluent yet. Paste it in this website, which takes a while sometimes. Paste it in this website. And there's no matches. So there, we can stay in the dark. Is it working? Maybe we can take out some numbers, some letters. No? Here we go. Interesting. Come into being to take place. Are you working here? Let's take off some letters. No. Alright, this was going to be like a little exercise. I picked it. Okay, here we are. There's the right word. Bewitched and beguiled. There we go. Fascinate as a snake. Snake charmed. So that's cool. So we have the internet. So not only are we not murdered for having the text, that was the first thing. Also, in recent human history, you get murdered for having the text in a language you can read. We have it in English. Also, only recently have we got the actual translations and not the translated translations with the problems of translators who are playing out their own pathologos. So we actually have and a lack of their own understanding. We have a translator from someone who's a philosopher, so they can recognize words like ousia and dianoia and noesis. But also we have the Greek. So we just looked up this word. We have the English from this new translation, and we just have the internet. So in the last 20 years, we have awakened what we need to go into the next stage of development. Anyone can do this. We do this together every couple of days, or however often you watch these or listen to these. Isn't that cool? We can end the bloodshed. We can end the suffering. We can end our own internal conflict and depression and anxiety and sense of meaninglessness. We can spit out the black pill. There's an expression now, being black pilled, being a doomer, doom scrolling through social media. We've got enough, openness of conversation to realize we're just living the tragic and stupid implications of our ignorance, and nothing changes. Capitalism, everyone knows capitalism is corrupt, but nothing's happening. We all know politicians are corrupt, nothing's happening. We all know having a few billionaires at the expense of the suffering of the entire human race is stupid, but no one's doing anything about it. We all know this, marketing is bollocks, and so we get sad, black-pilled. But we just use the internet together, as we do repeat together, to not just read the text, not just in our own language, but we got to see something else about the word. Oh, it's like you're being snake charmed, beguiled, bewitched. So we can be the translators ourselves. There is no middleman anymore. We can see the logos directly. It's exactly what we're learning to do. So humanity has the level, we've awoken to the level where we have what we need to solve our problems and reach our higher state of being. Isn't that cool? Spit out that black pill, folks. Wow. So we've got beguiled. We can also add our own. Let's do it. So we can just highlight that because we have the technology to click a button and highlight something. And then we can add a note and add in bewitched or snake charmed. So you could even do your own text. Have fun. Translate this for your own. And instead of saying beguiled, say bewitched, or say charmed like a snake. It fits. So that's cool. That's something great for us. So spit out that black pill, folks. All right. And now, the souls of the thoughtless wander about, have to justly look requite for having been nourished in a defective way. Their desire, okay, so what you seek, you take as real, and you desire, that binds your soul even in the next life, because you're thoughtless, you haven't got this way through philosophy. Logos, dialectic, and being, there's our three dianoia aspects. Therefore, you've been nourished yourself in your life in a defective way. Thus, you're requiting. Again, let's try requiting. So, okay. Firstly, let's make sure this is the word justice. Do it together. Okay. Paste. Copy. Deacon. Let's see if deacon means justice. And order, right. Okay, I don't think it's that one. Huh? Penalty awarded by the judge. A judgment. Custom and usage. Interesting. See, this is the start of justice, I'm pretty sure. Yes. Right. Order, law, judgments. Justice. Yes, it is justice. So we see, yes, justice. So, we have justice. So there's a just judgment or a justice. And then, so there's a kind of justice for the way that we have lived in our life. So another reason to spit out the black pill. There is a consequence to fascists and billionaires and dragons sitting on their wealth and exploiting the planet and people. There is a consequence for people hurting others and becoming tyrants or harming populations of people. And what does that justice entail? Convert that. Okay, jump over to the thing. E. Tinuse. Who says Tinuse? What does Tinuse mean? Oof. That's a wall of text. Pay a price, return or recompense. Mostly in a bad sense. Pay a penalty. All right, so we get it. Pay a penalty. So there's some sort of payback or penalty, or there is a good sense. Acquit oneself of an obligation. Let's click another one. Another cool thing we get. Just click another button and you have another ancient Greek dictionary. Pay a price, return a penalty. Requital, make a return. So, because requital is a kind of a complicated word, but we can use our technology to get what it means. To pay back, pay a penalty, to return a payment, pay a price. So, it's a justice where you have to pay back what you've done, or pay some sort of consequence for. And what is it? For living your life in a way where you have nourished your soul in a defective way. What is it? Well, it involves they wander because of this until their desire for that which they closely followed, the corporeal, which binds them to the body. Interesting. Until. That's not a full sentence. Until their desire for that which they closely follow for the corporeal is diminished. You're free from that. So, 81D. Here's another benefit of the last 10 years. Not only do we have this text, not only do we have the work of Dr. Grimes and helping share with us how to understand these words accurately. He would always say, oh, it's so weird talking about him in the past tense. All I do is teach people how to read, which is legit. It's there. We just have to learn how to read it. So, but another reason why we can overcome our problems and spit out that black pill is we have this. That translation didn't quite make sense to me, so just jump on the internet and open another translation. Okay, so we were at 81C. Click a button there. But it will be interpenetrated. That's interpenetrated. The soul and the body. With the corporeal, with intercourse. Oh, there's intercourse. Intercourse and communion with the body has made a part of its nature because the body has been its constant companion and object of its care. Interesting. Nice, he's flipped it. Object of its care. I mean, it does fit. I was going to say flip it because the body is kind of in control. And my friend, we must believe that the corporeal is burdensome and heavy and earthly and visible, and such a soul is weighed down by this and dragged back into the visible world. There's our incarnation again, reincarnation. Through fear of the invisible. So if you go into the other world with a fear, that can limit you. And of the other world. And so, again, so other world, so dragged back into the physical world in a reincarnation because of your fear, and also because of, click this button here, takes you to the next one. And it's loading. But I also have the rouse. And as they say, it flits about the monuments and the tombs where the shadowy shapes of souls have been seen, figures of those souls. Okay, I think we're on the wrong section. Talking about the ghosts. 81D. Oh no, we're in the right one. The souls who have not been set free in purity, but retain something of the visible, and this way they are seen. He's talking about ghosts. It is likely, CBs, and it is likely that those are not the souls of the good, but those of the base. Not based as in good, the way it's used now, but base as in gross or bad. The word is kakon, bad in Greek. Which are compelled to flit about such places as a punishment of their formal evil mode of life. And they flit about until through the desire of the corporeal, which clings to them, they are again imprisoned in a body. Okay, a little bit clearer. Obviously, we can see where he's stuck, where he's at, where he's stuck. He's stuck with the idea of evil, and so that would be a dialogue we would have with this translator if we were able to, because it's not evil, of course. It's bad. But let's read it in the Rouse and see if this is a little bit more accurate. I'm reading this book. Oh, it's battered. Look at it. It's falling apart. So here we go. The souls. Here we go. So even he gets rid of the idea of evil. They're not the souls of the good, but the souls of the mean, which are compelled to wander about such places as a penalty for their former way of life, which was evil. Okay, he did say evil. Boo. And wander they must until the desire for the bodily, which is always in their company, they are imprisoned once more in a body. Okay, so again, we did wrong. So it sounds like they're saying until their desire for the body, they are imprisoned, as is likely in the same habits as they practiced in the life before. So the habits we practice in this life, according to Socrates, imprisons us and causes our reincarnation, which is a kind of justice, or justly requiting ourselves until we are no longer bound. So we can say the cause of our fascism, one of them is, of course, being bound to the body, culminating in ignorance, culminating in mistaking physical expressions of truth, beauty, and justice for the real. So the right structure, but with the wrong objects in the structure, causing the shadow of the dialectic. The real dialectic has being as the actual beauty and justice, used as our paradigm for wisdom and for analysis in everything we do, as we read earlier in our questions and answers. I love that section, actually. Let's questions. Here. Socrates says, the equal, the greater, lesser, and all of the beings. For our logos is not just about the equal itself, but the beauty, self-beauty, and self-good, and justice, and holiness, and all of those beings that we stamp the seal that which absolutely is, when we are asking questions and in answering questions. I like that. So we use that in what's the paradigm for asking and answering questions? A dialectic. So, that binds us. Not only is the shadow of the real that we see through our base nourishing of the body, the parrot not only is, so let me say that again. We were just talking about how the cause of injustice in our world is to be enslaved by the care of the body. Therefore, you take physical examples of justice and beauty and goodness itself and equal itself and all of the beings. You take only the physical shadows of them as your paradigm, and then you act in a bad way, mistaking it for beauty, allowing us to apply the dialectic to it to remove that false item or the object from that aspect of our soul. So again, our soul is good. I mean, the dialectic structure within our soul, seeking the good is good. It's just that we have pretenders to the throne, directed to the wrong objects. But in seeking the implications of the body, riches, fames, stuff that you eat, touch, see, drink, eat, and have sex with, as what's most real, that will bind you to the body. And you'll have to go through some requiting of your injustice. Injustice because what you're doing is nourishing injustice to yourself, really, and to others, but as a consequence, but to yourself, because you're nourishing yourself in a defective way. until the desire for that which you are following in your life, training yourself to love in your life until that desire goes away, which can only happen by freeing us from the chains of that which we think is real and we therefore desire. Nothing else is true. So that was one of our questions. Why is the greatest problem desire and pleasures? And why is it because of those things we take as true? Well, you'd be training yourself, wouldn't you? Your whole life is spent training. Oh, this is true, this is true, this is true. And when you die, you're afraid of what's actually true. That's not what I thought was true. I'm going to go back into that world. Which is a kind of punishment in a way for having nourished your soul according to that. And also we see, why do billionaires love money? Because they want fame. So they'll buy Twitter, and they want lots of money. So they'll horrendously exploit their workers and employ child labor and throw their pollution into the ocean, killing the planet, because they're not bound by truth and actually caring for the environment and humanity and reaching our humanity's goals. No, there's no goal to humanity. I can't see it. I can't have sex with this goal. That's too abstract. But I can have sex with women if I have money. I can eat lots of food if I have money. So our job to be a caretaker for a planet, sickness to health, but also to reach the excellence of being humans, are missed. So we can use this to understand the cause of human problems. Socrates is laying it out for us, giving us what we need to figure it out for ourselves. But for ourselves, we also want to make sure we are not falling into that trap for our incarnation and when we experience leaving the body, even in this life, because that's what philosophy is. The art of practicing as well as understanding death and dying. So, and you'll be bound to characters that correspond to whatever you've attended in your life. So gluttony and arrogance, you'll be like a donkey, come like as a donkey. And we have lots of awesome sound effects. That's what a donkey with a cold sounds like. If you highly esteem injustice and tyranny, you'll come back as a wolf. Meow. That's what a wolf sounds like. Or a hawk or kite. And interesting here, this is one of the things Socrates does. He compares our modern common sense idea of what virtue and goodness is with truth that you only get from philosophy. What about of all of those kinds, what is the most good daemon of these kinds, of these? Which gives us two bits of information. One, he's doing that thing he loves to do, compare our common sense view of what it means to be the best sort of a person, but also he's giving us information about what we should be striving for. We don't want to be a wolf or a donkey or a hawk or whatever. We want to be the most good daemon. Okay? And what's the difference? Well, these would call that having the popular and social virtues. Common sense. Without philosophy and intellect. Yeah, he lives a pretty balanced life. He seems pretty just. He seems pretty temperate. They'll either come back in a social and gentle tribe of animal, perhaps, or such as bees or wasps or ants. So you live I lived a pretty good life. Okay, well, enjoy your life as a bee. Because they're gentle and they're social. You meet a lot of bees in the beehive. You have a lot of friend ants. Or maybe, yeah, or again into the same tribe of human beings. Or maybe you come back around as a human again. But we don't want the popular and social versions. We want the true, what it means to truly be a most good daemon. So, good, daemon, daemoni, daemon, and this ending of the word means the most. So we want to not come back as a bee or any of those things. We want to enter into the genus of the gods. And we have to make sure we're practicing philosophy and doing it and perfectly purify ourselves. So not only does philosophy give us what we need to solve our human problems, maybe save humanity, maybe overcome the suffering and the exploitation, and socially and individually, it gives us what we need to reincarnate into a better place. One who is a lover of learning, uses the Logos, practices philosophy in the right way, refrains from the desires relating to the body, do not surrender themselves to that by fear of being poor or fear of dishonor. Do not walk or talk according to them. That's real philosophy, and you'll accomplish a loosening or releasing or parting, which we said, it's our attachment to what we've been nurturing ourselves in. That causes our attachment in our reincarnations. We delivered from that and purifying our souls, following wherever philosophy leads, what we call following the Logos. We were talking about that earlier. So, the one who loves learning recognizes that when philosophy first takes hold of you, when you begin this quest, you are wholly imprisoned in the body. Usually, for most people, you're not used to separating the soul from the body. You're used to, hey, I actually feel happier when I can meet my needs, and I feel nice when I'm kind of well liked by people. But he says, self-imprisonment is the greatest assistant to your own imprisonment. It's a saying. Self-policing sheep, some people say, kind of like that, a little bit different. But when you become a lover of learning, you recognize that philosophy takes hold of your soul when you're in that state of affairs. But philosophy gently encourages you to be free of that by revealing to our soul that the eyes and our senses are full of deceit, eyes and ears and senses, persuades us. We're not doing this out of fear, we're being persuaded. There's something, we're learning what should guide our thinking. What is the model of thinking? And what should persuade us? We recognize some people aren't persuaded. They stay clinging to their prejudices their whole lives when they should change their mind. Like science is using evidence and reasoning and repeatable experiments to show that there's sufficient evidence to change your mind. And we call thumbs up, and we call Luddites or brainless people who don't listen to science, or fascists or fundamentalists. I'm not listening to the science on this or that. I don't listen to evidence. I listen to my heart. But there's something more, because there is something beyond physical senses. Even the eyes and the ears and every physical sense is full of deceit. Something else. So we're learning about not only how to think, dianoia, but what should change our minds. Talked about we use all of the beings in our questions and answers. We saw how a logical necessity and a beauty to the arguments should persuade us. And of course, in philosophy, you get to confirm your understanding in direct experience, which is what makes this game awesome. You get to have this experience. You have to confirm it. You don't send your slave to the banquet. You go. Check it out. And so in doing so, we summon the soul to gather herself together, self into self, and trust nothing other than the self. Any one of the real beings, self by self, that you intellect, that's when you get there, trust it. Anyone, whether you're experiencing the oneness as the perfection of beauty, as the ultimate just ordering of all of existence, that's what you trust. And consider anything other than being real, that which you see in any other way, because they don't lead to the truth. Looking at two sticks is not going to lead you to the truth of ultimate reality. Until you gather yourself together, you realize, oh, sticks are talking about being equal to each other. A beautiful person reminds me of beauty itself. Okay? That which you see and is intelligible, but is unseen to the senses. Therefore, the soul of the true philosopher thinks to herself that her deliverance must not be opposed, and it keeps away from the pleasures and desires and pains and fears. There's our 4. Pleasures and pains, fears and desires. Whenever any soul is involved, here's the problem. In excessive pleasure, pain, fear, or desire, then she will not expect such harm which one would believe from those selves, such as, okay, so we recognize that if you're experiencing extreme pleasure, pain, fear, or desire, you can get sick, or you can, waste yourself pursuing yourself in gluttony. But the greatest and worst and most extreme problem, what is that? That the human soul feels excessive plain pleasure or pleasure towards something. She is led to believe that this experience is most clear and real. So this is the greatest problem of pleasures and pains, specifically pleasures. That you think it's the most real. And we're seeing, oh, that's going to affect your incarnation. Are you going to be a bee or a donkey? The soul is bound to it is bound to the body through this. So it's not the experience of the extremes, it's thinking it is most clear and most real. We've got a question. What exactly this idea of clear is new? What's it adding? We've been talking about real all the way through. Logos directed towards being. Dialectic on being. Using being to judge your questions and answers. The truth is being. What does philosophers seek the truth? What is that self-being? The hyparxis of all the beings, the self is here. That's what's real, but what about clear? Puzzle. Right, and what's the problem? If you think that which you think is most clear and real binds your soul to the body, every pleasure and pain nails her to the body, as it were, keeping self distracted, welding them together to make the soul corporeal, so that she believes that the things that the body says must be true. Shared beliefs. She welcomes the body. So this nailing comes not just by having the experiences, but by thinking it's most real and clear. A shared belief that our physical world is most real. Non-philosophy. Or anti-philosophy. Shares in the same ways and the same food, as it were. So you're nourishing, you're giving yourself kind of food by seeking these extreme experiences, pleasures, desires, but also pains and fears. And it nails your soul to the body. She is quite full of the body upon leaving and falls back into another body and is naturalized into it. Now, we looked at that word before, but we didn't leave a note. So let's right quick look this up. Fieste. That means implant. Oh, that's right, implant. Like planted in soil. I remember now. Let's get another one. Fun. Implant. To grow in. Be rooted in. Implant or rooted in. That's right. And I made that hilarious Australian joke that if you seek pleasures and pains of the body and you think it's most real and clear, you're rooted. That's hilarious. If you're Australian, you'd be on the floor laughing hysterically because your soul would be rooted. Now, implant or rooted. Of course, rooted means rooted like a plant, as a seed that is sown. That's the metaphor. And you can't be part of the communion, the joining. So again, Christian idea, but joining is the word, of the divine company The God is the word there, the God, and the pure and uniform. What you say is most true. So we're up to. Let's keep going. Accordingly then, for the sake of the beings, the ones who love learning are orderly and virile. There's a vitality. So here we see orderly and virile. Orderly relates to temperance, sound-mindedness. You order all of the parts of your soul towards one desire. And virile is the kind of vitality that happens when you have courage, which you need. You need a power to move towards the actions. If you're afraid and trusting your fears and desires and stuff, it'll be hard to get inspired, to have energy. You can feel down, depressed, anxious, but you want this virility. It comes by trusting the logos always, even in the ups and downs of the physical senses that are not most real and clear. It's a kind of shadow of reality. But it's for the sake of the beings that you love learning. And it's for the sake of the beings that you're orderly and virile. This is an answer to our question. What makes the virtues the real virtues and not the vices? For the sake of the beings. This is what you're after. To be joined with the God and of the pure and uniform. For the sake of the beings. That you are orderly and virile. Not for the sake of which the many think. Don't listen to the beast. The monster in that analogy we talked about earlier. I certainly do not think so. Wait, or do you think they do? I do not. So even CVs recognize that the many, the popular opinions about philosophy, the popular opinions about justice and virtue, even today, right now, are not about this. You meet someone at a dinner party, oh, you're a philosopher, what's that? Oh, it's for the sake of beings that you love learning and you develop the virtues like ordering yourself and developing courage. For the sake of the being. But isn't it about, I don't know, being a good person, living a just life or something like that? No, it's for the sake of the beings. Isn't that religion? No. Religion's a belief and you don't actually get there. Not part of their thing. Maybe when you die, it's a promise. But no, it's not that. It's for the sake of the beings. To be, what does that mean? To be joined with God and the pure and uniform. And if you don't, you'll be acting unjustly. If you're not doing that, you're going to be the cause of your own imprisonment. And you'll have to go through some sort of just compensation because of the way that you've nourished your soul in a defective way. So it's worth playing. Let me know how that goes if you answer that in that way next dinner party you're at. So the soul of the virile philosopher must follow the logos in this way. There's our expression, following the logos. Let's give it a fun color. Let's make it blue. Follow the logos in this way. Funny, we talked about it earlier, didn't we? You should not think that on the one hand, oh God, I hate this expression. She should not think that this philosophical soul must free herself while delivering herself to those pleasures and pains and thus imprison herself again. Thus laboring in vain as Penelope did, by practicing her work and weaving in an opposite way. She follows again the logos and achieves a calm from these emotions and always communes in this, in the true and divine. And so beholding the unopinable, it's not opinions. It can't be opinions. And being so nurtured by this, you can't have an opinion about truth. So say, hey, is it about religion? No. Religion's a belief. It's a kind of opinion that you get from someone else. I'm not interested in it. What about theories? Isn't philosophy about picking what theories? No, it's not about opinions. You can't have, it's unopinable. Opinion does not relate to this realm. It's a beholding, it's a communion, it's a joining. Commune with to always commune, and we see Usia, the version of Usia here, by always Usia-ing, communing, joining with this in the true and divine. And so beholding, that's what it is. So beholding the unopinable and being so nurtured, that should nurture you, nurture the virtues, nurture your soul. She believes that she must live in this way as long as she may live, and that at the time she dies, she will come into that which is akin and to such a kind, so escape from human ills. So Penelope, I think, was a myth of a lady who would stitch something up, but then would unstitch it, so she'd maybe protect herself from a tyrant or something. Yeah, like, and so she would never finish or whatever. But here we're saying, no, we do finish. And don't unstitch your work. So whatever pleasures or pains you feel, make sure you don't accept them as the most real and most clear. And he's not saying become a monk and don't eat sandwiches. Don't have sex with people. Don't take that as being most real and clear, because that will nail your soul to the body. This isn't your goal. That's the goal of vice. But we can come to an end. Hey, is philosophy endless? Well, no. It comes to an end. When you die, you will come to that which you're akin, into such a kind, and so escape from human ills. We can solve our problems, not just our human problems that comes from the ignorance or the shadow of the logos, because we haven't awoken philosophy yet, and we haven't specifically awoken the logos, which is what we follow. Follow the logos. But all problems. All human problems for our soul. There's a goal. So this is the three questions that make us rational. Where do we come from? Where are we going? And what should we do while we're here? This. There is a goal. Where are we going? To that. Either to be a donkey or a bee or whatever, or to as some sort of punishment for nurturing your soul unjustly. Or what was the word he used? Defective way, or to be to enter the company of the God, to join with God in pure and uniform, and for the sake of those beings, that you do what you do, that you develop your virtues, that you become courageous, that you develop temperance, and you order yourself. It's for this. But also you will escape your human problems. Therefore, from such a nature, there is nothing terrible, O Simius and Cebes, that the soul should fear. So there's nothing to fear about your death. Don't fear the afterlife. Don't fear going to hell. So long as you awoken philosophy and you recognize that we're here to nourish ourselves in the right way. We'll have to go through some sort of requitals if we nourish our soul in a defective way. Therefore, there's nothing terrible, O Simius and Cebes, that the soul should fear, for it is never the case that when time comes for her to depart from the body, that she will be gone and scattered by the winds, dispersed and panic-stricken, and up to the point that nothing remains which exits in any way at all. So there's the conclusion to CB saying, oh, okay, if philosophy is the art and practice of death and dying, and bringing us to knowledge and all these sorts of things, then you'd have to say that the soul is immortal. And he said, well, gave the arguments, and even CB's introduced one. Simius was a bit confused about the logos of learning as remembering, nailed that down. CB's jumped in and said, oh, thanks, Simius, for clearing that up. But what about when we die? Some people think that the soul won't exist after we die. Many people, materialists especially, scatters to the wind, dispersed and panic-stricken. It's interesting because some people say there is no soul and therefore there's nothing after we die, but his is more of a religious belief. There is a soul, but you'll be panic. Death is a thing to fear because you'll be scattered to the winds. So it's not a physicalist belief. It's more of a religious one. But don't fear that, because you will go somewhere. The soul is immortal. You'll come back based on your nurturing. Or you'll go to where you're really after. That which is really real and clear. The divine. In the company of the divine, with good gods and masters, daemons, and humans who have completed their work here. Nice conclusion, Soc. Since we have seen that Simius and Cebes have not been able... Is this the translator? I'm not sure. Let's read it anyway. Since we have seen that... Yeah, I think this is the translator. Let's read it. Since we have seen that Simius and Cebes have not been able to follow the way of the Logos, interesting, and Socrates has been unfolding for them, not only by their confession of their recognition of their manifest ignorance in answers like, I did not realize I did not know what I was saying, and also by Simius's confession in behalf of his companions that Cebes is most distrustful of men concerning men and their Logos. What effect can we expect that these most beautiful insights had on them? I say that for one, Cebes does not believe in the singularity of Socrates in his vision that is manifest. He is probably suspicious of Socrates. Okay. In reading the history of... Oh, goodness. One can well see the kinds of men that were prevalent at those times when the plague hit Athens. For he reports that of these that were not infected gave way to their inmost desires and said goodbye to any moderation, feigned or otherwise. All right, so this is an interpretation by a translator. Whether or not judging the character of Simius and Cebes and whether or not they were actually convinced. But it's not in the text, so we can leave that. And we can turn it into our own question. Did it affect them? Was this enough? Was it enough to free Cebes from his fear that the soul is scattered to the wind after we die? Was it enough for you? Was this reasoning about the nature of reincarnation and a kind of justice extending beyond our lifetime? Was it enough for you? Did it help get rid of your fear of death? Did it make you question, oh, actually, how well do I think what is most clear and real is that which the beings, and how much do I think the physical body is most clear and real? Again, he's not saying don't have pleasures and pains, but don't take them as most clear and real, because that's what nails the soul to the body and makes your soul like the body and will dictate the kind of incarnation you have. Phaedo says there was a long silence for a time when Socrates had said this, and Socrates appeared to be looking at the Logos that self had spoken. Oh, remember earlier today I talked about how Dr. Pierre Grimes would, and you can find these talks on YouTube, search PRS, just fantastic Logos and demonstration of something in philosophy, and he would sit back and he would look at it like, cool, I was wondering how that would come together. As though he was sharing in the Logos but not doing it. Or rather, the self that was doing it is beyond regular ideas of the self. Socrates appeared to be looking at the Logos that self had spoken. So we talked about the daemon. If Socrates says, hey, to be most like the most good daemon is what we want to do here. That's where we're going to be. That's where we're going to join. And if Socrates is saying he is hopeful and he's got nothing to fear about his death, then it would indicate that he is most like the daemon. And if the daemon is the voice of the Logos truth from self, then it makes a lot of sense of this. He was looking at the Logos that self had spoken. He's speaking the Logos of self. And of course, the word he is lifting heavily there. The self is speaking. And what is he doing? Watching. Remember earlier in the talk today, we talked about this as a kind of question given by someone like Socrates. Why not watch mind? Xenophanes' question. What is the whole of seeing, hearing, and thinking, and maybe even speaking? And what is watching? What is watching? Which means you're watching mind. The whole of seeing, hearing, and thinking, well, that's all aspects of mind, in your experience at least. And Socrates was watching the logos that self had spoken. Isn't that amazing? As were most of us. It's really cool. Why not watch mind? Watch the whole. Don't get wrapped up in the specifics of that you can fear or desire. Buddhism calls that grasping. The problem, the essence of Buddhism is that the human problems are caused by grasping. That's the essence of Buddhism. Grasping, reaching, wanting to hold things of the physical senses. Thumbs down, don't do that. He's not, he's watching. So, and if we can tie it to what we just heard, grasping for physical things, thinking that's most real, that's most clear. This is what I most seek. Pleasures and desires, or avoiding pains and having motivated by fear of worse pains. Don't grasp in that way. Watch your mind. Xenophanes' question. What is the whole of seeing, hearing, and thinking? Dr. Grimes would often say, try it for a month. Try it for a month or two and see what happens. And here, try it. Hold on to what it would be like to watch the logos like Socrates is doing and realize that the logos that's happening is from self without having to grasp it, to do it. Hey, by the way, if you're not doing it, all of those incorrect beliefs about self from our shadow, from our problem, you're inadequate, you're dumb, you're stupid, you can't do it, you can't achieve what you want, all those bullshit false beliefs about the self, they're not going to come up as much if you're not the one doing it, if you're not grasping, if you're rather watching it. It might diminish your problem significantly. If you hold Xenophanes' question, what is the whole of mind? What is the whole of seeing, hearing, thinking? And what is watching? Try it out. Share your feedback in the Discord and in the chat. Appeared to be looking at the logos that self had spoken. Interesting. But Simmias and Cebes, our two friends here, were talking quietly to each other, and Socrates saw them. Cebes and Simmias. Socrates saw them and self asked. So even our author here, Phaedo is saying self asked. So self was speaking through Socrates. Or of Socrates. Through is again not right because it's physical, isn't it? You go through a physical tube. But if it's just simply if all is mind and logos is the unfolding of mind, and both mind and logos is from self, there's our triad, first, second, and third hypothesis, or the self-mind, self-logos. Then even he can recognize self-asked. Socrates was watching the logos that self was speaking. So Socrates saw them and self asked, what is it? Does it appear to you that what was said by these logos was indeed deficient? So there's the opposite of sufficient or deficient. What we should, some sort of criteria for judging our questions and answers. For surely there still has to be many more apprehensions and objections if indeed anyone cares to truly discuss selves sufficiently. There's our other word, we just predicted it. Therefore, on the one hand, oh God, I should stop saying oh God. If I read it, I read it. If I see it up ahead, I will skip out the on the one hand. I don't like that expression, it's too wordy. Therefore, if you are considering something else, I have nothing to say. But if there is some puzzle Looking for puzzles. That sounds like a philosopher. About these matters, do not hesitate to speak for selves and to discuss this. If it has come to light for you that what has been said could be better said in some way, and in turn, if you think you will more easily find a way with me, take me along also. Isn't that beautiful? You don't have to just say it once. Oh, I've said it once, piss off. No, keep saying it. Hey, can you say it in a better way? What do we do when we do a dialectic? We go back to the start. Can we say it in a better way? Have we learned from the experience? What have we been saying is the nature of life? Conversation. What is the cause of problems? Stopping the conversation. What causes the stopping of conversation? All these stuff we're learning. Loving the body, not realizing you've got a purpose to nourish your soul, not realizing there's the incarnation, the image of the beings that you actually do things for, but seeking physical expressions. My dad was so beautiful when he told me this, so I'm going to be like that. And so on. But we talked about today, essentially it's a conversation. Socrates is watching the logos that self is speaking. We are engaged in a conversation with the text, with ourselves, in Discord, in the chat, with our friends. Hey, we talked about doing finger paintings and not just giving a speech on what the finger paintings mean, but being in conversation with your audience. Hey, let me see, where were you at? Where are you at? And where are you stuck? And compared in relation to my painting, in relation to justice. The painting is called Justice itself. And all the fascists try and stop conversation. So we could say one way of defining the essence of humanity and what we're here for, conversation. Keep the conversation rolling. And what's the essence of our problems? Ending the conversation. Now you can add to that and say, oh, by the way, to do it well is to be in a conversation with this here text. Learn the dialectic and logos. Do it for the beings. Apply it to our dreams and our problems. But essentially it's conversation. And he's saying, hey, if you can say it better, don't hesitate to speak. Speak up. Use your voice. Discuss. Keep going. Say it again. And by the way, if you can find a better way, take me. He doesn't have to always be the one speaking. If you can see it, what do you see? Take me along also. Even on his last day, he's willing to follow the logos, even if it comes from whoever. His friends who just heard this. Isn't that beautiful? So I guess that's the theme of today's podcast. Keeping the conversation alive, the significance of that, keeping the conversation alive, using our art to foster conversation. The learning of what philosophy is the learning of conversation. Conversation using dianoia, which is directed towards being, using the logos and dialectic. Questions and answers. That's the kind of conversation. We talked about that being the highest art today. And the mythologizing of that is moving it into other arts. But then you can use those other arts to foster that other conversation. That's the game. Keep the conversation alive. And catch yourself when you're certain and you're stopping your own conversation. Oh, I'm convinced that I'm a this or that. No. Does that end the conversation? It probably is going to be unjust then. You're going to pay for that, even in your next incarnation. Love the conversation. Hey, if this conversation is what leads us to the beings, then it's for the sake of this that we have our virtues. Order yourself so that you can participate in the lover of learning. What does learning happen through? Dialectic, which is what? A conversation. It's loving of learning, loving of wisdom, and loving of phronesis. Phronesis is using that. So if learning is learning how to talk, you have to do that through conversation. Loving, that's lover of learning, the first step. Below methesis. Loving of wisdom is realizing, oh, this model that we're learning is in wisdom, is in being. It's the beings. For the sake of the beings. Now I'm a philosopher. Oh, and I have that initiation into the experience of being itself, and I can hold on to it for as long as I'm there. Now I'm a lover of phronesis. What does learning happen through? Conversation. How do you reach wisdom? Conversation. What do you do once you have it? Talk with your friends. Like Socrates. He's initiated. He's happy where he's going to go. So he has phronesis. But he's willing to talk and listen and have conversations with his friends. It's conversations all the way up. So if you catch yourself talking to yourself in a way that does not foster this kind of conversation, beating yourself up, talking down to yourself, here is a conclusion, you're that, no questions, then this is the just requital or punishment, kind of, I don't want to use the punishment. This is the payment you have to pay from nourishing yourself in a defective way. If you've nourished yourself by not encouraging your questions, not encouraging conversations, you're going to incarnate into the next moment in that way. Into the next moment, into the next thought that comes up, and even into the next lifetime. Reincarnations all the way through. Any level. But what's the payment you have to do? It's not suffering. You don't make a horse better by beating a horse. It's not punishment, because that doesn't open the conversation. So what would be the just payment in the next moment or the next lifetime or the next coffee you had with a friend? Having to let go of the fears and desires, let go of the seeking of pleasures and pains, and love, order yourself towards, become virile towards conversation. About what? About Tom Cruise? No, about the beings. That's the punishment. Goodness. Actual nourishment. Every moment is an opportunity to nourish your soul in the way that you're here to do. It's not about being bad or suffering or blame. It's just what happens. You nourish yourself in this way, that's what you're going to be. You don't get to dwell with the gods? Of course not. You're not like the gods yet. But I want to nourish myself in this bad way. Then you're going to come back and be a donkey. Or wake up to philosophy, awaken the love of conversation. Socrates talks about being a friend. If a friend said, hey, you shouldn't go to the football game, you'd ask him why. You'd go in a conversation. Why? Oh, I don't think you've trained hard enough this week to play in the game. Why do you think that? What do you think I could do better? Do you think I could maybe play half a game? Or I think I've trained well. Why would you disagree with me? That you'd have a conversation. You wouldn't just automatically believe it. So the inner critic that says you suck, why do we believe it? A kind of justice, a kind of requital we have to go through. We are living out the implications, or we are in our lifetimes living a dialectic, the implications that follow others to others, a false definition, a poor nourishment. We've been nourishing ourselves in an anti-dialectic. Don't just believe it. Open a conversation. That's interesting, voice. Why do you say that? Who convinced you that? Who seemed most real and clear when they were telling you that? So I've got some questions. If anyone says, no, shut up with your questions, that's an unjust person. That's a person with the soul of a donkey. Don't listen to them. No. You're nourishing yourself. You're actually nourishing your soul in a deficient way by ending conversation like that. We're here to love conversation. It's the conversation that we order ourselves for, that we gain courage and virility for. And even Socrates said, hey, surely you've got more to say. Surely we can, don't hesitate to speak for yourselves. Let's discuss this more. Hey, if you can see another way of talking with it about this, bring me along too. Conversation. That's it. You have the technology. We talked about the internet today. We talked about having this translation, which is new. Do we have what we need to reopen the human conversation? We have what we need to discover how to do it, its direction, the structure of it, the benefit of it. the nature of our soul. We can use it to discover the nature of our soul, how to solve problems, escape from all human ills. We have what we need to enter into the human conversation and keep it moving. Is that exciting? And in doing so, we see, hey, this conversation might even go beyond this lifetime. With men who've completed their work here, better men and gods than you'll find here, as Socrates said. And hey, if you have that really well, you might be most like a daemon. What does a daemon do? Where's the word daemon? Here we go. The most good daemon. The true virtues, not the fake ones. The most good daemon. What does the logos do? What does the daemon do? Communicates the logos that we follow. Follow the logos. What was Socrates doing? Watching the logos that self had spoken. The daemon. Watch the daemon. Share in the daemon. Encourage the daemon. What does the daemon do? Conversation. So apply it to our art, apply it to our dreams, apply it to our inner voice. Oh, interesting conversation. What about shut up? Oh no, shut up. Who told you shut up was good? That's an interesting conversation. Because you're nourishing your soul badly. You're going to end up in the mud. You're going to act unjust. Mud if you're lucky. Come back as a donkey maybe. Let's open the conversation. In every area of life. Ourselves, with our friends. But what do we talk about? Being. Follow the logos. That's what it means to be a philosopher. For the sake of those beings, which leads us to joining with divine company, the God, and of the pure and uniform. Thank you, Socrates, for outlining all that for us. Exciting, simple. Another way that philosophy makes it simple. What's life about? Oh, conversation. Not any conversation. Conversation directed towards being. Through dianoia. Both in this life and the next. So what else is there to do? What else is there to do? Rather than engage in a conversation about the beings, which is the true yoga, which is the true mysticism. This is true spirituality. How many spiritualities stop conversation? No talking. Sit on the mat. Count your breath. Oh, it's not real spirituality. Many are the staff bearers, but true spirituality is therefore conversation. The logos of the self, directing us towards the beings. Ultimately, so we can join with the divine, that which is pure and uniform. It's a learning that we take with us into our next life and will affect our incarnations. But what's interesting is we don't have to grasp because we naturally seek conversation. We can watch the logos that self unfolds through mind, through our conversations, through our art, through our jobs and workplaces, through our schools, with our teachers, with our fellow students. All conversation directed towards being of the self. You can watch that unfold with Xenophanes' question. What is the whole of seeing, hearing, thinking, and what's watching the logos of the self unfolding in every area of reality? And hey, encourage questions. Do not hesitate to speak. If you can find a way of saying it better, please take me along also. I wonder what they're going to say to that. That is an invitation that Socrates is offering his friends and he's offering us. And it's an invitation I'm offering again with you all watching this. Join the conversation in the chat. If you want to watch along in live, you can join the conversation on Twitch. There's a link below. You can join the Discord. Share your highest understanding, your highest vision, and your highest understanding of your vision. Enter the conversation there. And hopefully I'll be setting up a Patreon soon so we can dedicate more time to dream analysis, to apply that conversation to our dreams. And if there's anything else that you would think, a way of saying this better, if you find a way of better way if it's come to light to you that this logos can be shared in a better way, please do not hesitate to speak for yourselves. If you think you will more easily find a way with me, take me along also. Yeah, in that spirit, if you have any ideas on how to share the logos in this channel or sustain it, please share that. Take me along also. On that note, I hope you take this along with you, and I hope to see you next time to keep the conversation rolling on into the next one. Thank you so much for joining me.